A new Australian film is releasing next week in cinemas, a really delightful Australian film called A Stitch in Time. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the writer, director and editor of A Stitch in Time, Sasha Hadden. Sasha, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Sasha, I know that you've made some short films and documentaries, but how did it come about that you were able to write and direct this film?
I just decided to do it. I think Don and I have been friends for many years, and we had an idea of working together, and we just, I guess, we're waiting for the right project, and then I just decided to write it, and we just decided we're going to make a movie. Basically.
I'm always intrigued about inspirations, because a story about an older woman and a difficult husband and trying to find a new niche in her life or new career and so on to make life meaningful for her. Were there any particular inspiring events that perhaps motivated the screenplay?
Well, my partner, Tim, and I went to see Craig Wood, who is editing Zhang Yimou's The Great Wall, starring Matt Damon, in Beijing. Tim's from China, so we went there and we visited Craig, and we just watched some other Zhang Yimou's films, and there was a film of his called Coming Home, and it just had this wonderful sense of community. Actually, all of Zhang Yimou's films just have this beautiful sense of community about them, and between that and seeing Driving Miss Daisy when I was 19 years old and absolutely in love with it, from Bruce Beresford, it just made me want to explore love also in that in a similar dynamics. I just found that eliminating youthful beauty and considering love in the context of a long life was quite a beautiful human experience to explore as a filmmaker.
Oh, terrific. What an interesting influence. Zhang Yimou is such a great filmmaker. So, yeah, excellent. So tell me, Sasha, in terms of the challenges you faced in writing the screenplay and getting financing to make the film, how did all that work?
Well, we didn't really find any financing to make the film to a degree. We had a lot of support from Panavision, Panasonic, and we had it was basically independently financed. We got such a ball rolling that we just couldn't stop it in the end, and we basically ended up making it completely independently.
Now, the story, as I've mentioned, is such an interesting one. Tell me about casting, because Maggie Blinco is so good in the central role. Was she your first choice? How did she get cast?
She was brought to my attention by Susie Maisels, the late Susie Maisels, who's a wonderful casting director who was casting the film along with Catherine Courtney Pryor. So there was a bit of a team at trying to figure out the dynamics of the cast. Susie taught me she spoke a lot about the dynamics between actors, and she almost casts like an artist, paints a picture of just the dynamics of different actors against each other, not just thinking of a single character, but thinking of all the characters in casting the single character. And she came up with Maggie and said she would be perfect. She set up a meeting and we met. I don't think she read a line at all. I think we just discussed the character, and from there I decided, yeah, she's great. And I think particularly what excited me about her is that she's very similar to the character in that this is her first role as a star in a movie, and it's come at a later period in her life. And I was actually very excited to work with her because she was, in one sense, living she's experiencing what the character was experiencing. So it was quite, it was exciting in that regard.
Okay. Oh, that's terrific because she's so good in the film. And speaking of casting, it's interesting to see Glenn Shorrock playing her her husband, and also veteran actors like Belinda Giblin and John Gregg, who are also such interesting figures in Australian cinema. And an actor called, is it now, my pronunciation of Chinese is awful, Hoa Xuande, is it?
Hoa Hyundai.
So tell me about working with these actors, because they are such good performers.
Yeah, there's one day that was the most thrilling day for me directing, was a scene where I had all of them in the one scene. All the actors you just mentioned, all in the one. And what was thrilling for me is that they were all, every single one of them approached it a little bit differently, and every single one of them needed a little bit different sort of direction in the approach of the direction. And it was just so, and then having Don there as well, it was just such a thrilling day. Can you say that question again?
Just about the dynamic of working with such an interesting array of actors, apart from Maggie, and how well they work together and so on.
Well, Maggie and Hoa they really did get along. They really did seem to have a bit of a connection, and my understanding is that they've continued with that connection with each other. Belinda and Maggie were good friends in real life, so that was wonderful. When I told them at John Gregg, they were so thrilled when I said John Gregg was playing Justin, and and so again, there's a sort of connection there. And Hoa, I guess he's sort of the outsider, as he is in the film. So in some sort of weird way, it sort of, life was sort of very similar to the art that we were creating in the dynamics. But it was, we had a really good schedule, or we could just be comfortable with the scene before we needed to move on, and it was just a real joyful shoot. We became all a bit like a family in a way, and it was a really lovely environment, and there's a lot of genuine emotion that could be carried into these performances.
Yes. And I'm intrigued about Glenn Shorrock because, of course, with his musical background and so on, it sort of fitted the character, but it's really an unsympathetic role. Tell me about casting him and working with him.
I actually originally wrote the script for Jack Thompson, who was unavailable at the time, and it was actually Maggie's suggestion of, why don't you try Glenn Shorrock? And I hadn't thought of him, and I looked at a YouTube video where he was singing Cool Change, and just to see what he'd look like and to just consider the dynamics between the two of them. And within 10 seconds, he had me in tears. And by the end of the song, I was already dialing a number to get in touch with him. He's such a nice guy in real life, but I think he really enjoyed playing someone with a few thorns in his who's he once you sort of he was almost method acting in a way. He was less technical but more sort of method, and I'd basically talk through why Duncan was the way he was. And one of the things was for Glenn to consider that if he is as talented as he is, but hadn't had any breaks, the frustration of that and the frustration of being taken advantage of in circumstances, and the frustration of having an illness that you really are not being honest about confronting yourself. And so it's just tormenting. So he's sort of tormented in multiple different ways. And Glenn could understand that. So I think, I think he was able to just take that and really sort of draw from his own emotions, despite the fact that he's a really nice guy.
Okay, no, he works really well in the film. Now, the film is beautifully shot, and the locations are really interesting too in Sydney area and so on. So tell me about working with such a superb cinematographer as, of course, Don McAlpine.
Oh, Don's wonderful. We've been friends for many years, and we had the idea of working together, and we just literally created the opportunity for ourselves to do it. I guess he had that Hollywood instinct to and for me to collaborate with that. And it was always, not only is he amazing to work with, but having that experience and being able to sort of keep me in check with regards to are we doing enough, I guess, because I think there's times where I'm almost over-engineering. I think I would have probably done 2 extra setups per scene if Don wasn't there, purely because I would have been I would have over-engineered things too much, I think, whereas Don could sort of see that some stuff wasn't necessary, and we could, just talking story visually, we're very similar in the way we sort of think visually of story-wise. And I think by enabling to sort of do two setups less per scene, that's a huge amount of time, and it sort of also allows for a lot more sort of comfort and relaxation on the set when we're only doing specifically what we need to do.
Okay. And talk about locations and the house that you used and houses perhaps, etc., because it's so well set up, I thought.
Well, the sandstone house was actually the house I grew up in. My mum lives there. We filmed it's that house, the sandstone house of Duncan's, is set in Balmain, but was actually filmed in Dural, where I grew up, and then the other houses, and then we filmed a lot of other areas around Dural as well. I think Justin's house is trying to capture part of Dural, there's a sort of wealth that I'm very familiar with, having grown up in that area, where just that, you'll hear the horses in the background, and there's just sort of small things that just touch on this sort of type of wealth that you get out in Dural and the Hills District. Is there any particular location you are thinking?
Oh, the
about?
market in particular, because the market is always a challenge, I suppose.
Yeah, so the markets, we used Balmain markets, and we were filming some scenes on there during the live markets, and then would film a lot of and then would fill in those scenes on another day. One problem we had on the first day filming the markets, it was that windy, and I turned to Don and said that if we try and do all our wide shots in this wind, nothing's going to match. So we just stuck to shooting out the first major scene, which kind of threw everything but worked. But the windiness in the scene where she's at the market is so beautiful, and it's the wind. It's like wind sort of gives this sense of change, and we had just such a beautiful weather for that opening scene that the schedule on the first day of the market just went out the window, and we just stuck to delivering those opening scenes with Hamish and Lieber.
Okay.
And then we had the markets to ourselves during the week, and we could sort of then fill in all the sort of close-ups. But yeah, the next live markets was quite. It really did need a strong rethink to how we could get around sort of losing most of one of our live market days. But it was really wonderful working there at the markets.
And I also like the cultural feel of the film, the Chinese students, as well as the actor playing the fashion marketer and so on. I like that sort of approach. So working with the Chinese students must have been also very interesting.
Oh, that was so much fun. Yeah, they were great. We actually started out the first scenes we did were in the Chinese student house. Yeah, I think my partner's from China, and he was doing his final actuary exam at Macquarie University, and we're very familiar with those sort of accommodations where you get a lot of students of different nationalities all cramming in and doing their studies and everything. I think a lot of people do comment on the diversity in the film, but I found that I wasn't really specifically pursuing that. It's just I find that Sydney is a very diverse place, and if you're making a film, telling a story in Sydney, it just seems like a natural thing that different different backgrounds all sort of come into the one story. Yep.
No, absolutely. And I thought that really added to the film. And tell me about the music score. Angela Little, who composed the music, has brought a very interesting score into your film.
Yeah, she was quite amazing. She'd been mentored by Thomas Newman for a year before coming onto this, and we were temping a lot of the film with Thomas Newman's score, so it was perfect. She was a perfect fit from the start. My father had seen a rough cut of the film but passed away, and we were all fine to do the music of the film, but just with his inheritance, I decided to do something special and spend the entire inheritance on doing live recordings at Trackdown. So we had Fiona Ziegler and who's the assistant concertmaster from the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and 15 other piece string section, and Bill Reevesby on playing keys. Angela also had some incredible artists, I think it was 3 or 4 musicians with these, including a harp, this iwi, thing called the niwi, these musicians that regularly work with Thomas Newman and John Williams on their scores. She went to LA and recorded them. So, sort of in celebration of my father and his wife, who had passed away a number of years earlier, Barbara Millman, who we have the card dedicated to her on the film. We just created this amazing soundtrack with live musicians. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Fantastic. You've got some great people working with you to fashion this film. That's great news. And of course, the icing on the cake is the film is getting a cinema release. Forget COVID, it's back to cinemas and so on, which is very gratifying for you.
Well, our marketing strategy was to make a good film, and to be, when people sort of go to the movies and choose a title and take a punt on seeing something, you know, if they take a punt on this one, I don't want them to be disappointed. And I want that night to be everything they hope that night would be. I think that, yeah, for me, there's a huge, the biggest financial responsibility a filmmaker has is to the person paying the $20 to, you know, their time and their money. You know, you're really given an amazing opportunity with this person, and you got to deliver. Is for me.
And I think you've got a ready-made audience, perhaps an older audience, but that doesn't matter because it fits beautifully that sort of demographic, and I'm sure people will want to see the film. So yeah, excellent stuff. So Sasha, I must ask you, are you now working on another film?
Well, I've got a couple of other scripts written, and there's two other stories I've been tinkering with. Yes, the answer is yes. I'm just trying to find there's about 5 films I want to make, and I'm just trying to decide what I want to, like, just trying to decide which one we'll just focus on and move forward with next. So yeah, I've got a sort of a true life crime that sort of changes, you know, really affects the soul of the city. It's something I want to do. And then there's a couple of just stories just really about human interactions. And but I think for me, it doesn't matter what big bangs or special effects are on the film, on the screen, which I love. It's the effect that has on the trajectory of the human experience and those interactions that thrill me the most. And so whatever I can feel will be the most exciting for me to pursue, we'll do that, I think.
Oh, fair enough. And I agree. It's all about story and about interaction. That's really human interaction that works so well. Look, congratulations, Sasha. We've been speaking to Sasha Hadden, who is the writer, director and editor of the Australian film A Stitch in Time, in cinemas from February 17th. And thank you so much, Sasha, for talking with me.
Thanks, Peter. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.